and that's the Minnesota Vikings signing Kyler Murray to be their next quarterback. The immediate thing I think of is like, oh, J.J. McCarthy's done, and we're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy next. But this is something that me and Ben have been discussing for at least like 2-3 weeks now about whatever quarterback goes to Minnesota, if they're any type of upgrade over J.J. McCarthy, over this guy, over that guy, I'm going to fear that team. Kyler Murray is an insane upgrade over what Minnesota had at quarterback last season. I think Minnesota is the new number one threat to the Lions in the NFC North. The odds would not reflect that. Detroit is still the odds-on favorite. Once again, I know we're in March. Season starts in September. I do just kind of want to, we're 6 months away, which is pretty crazy to think about. Lions are the odds-on favorite despite a disappointing free agency at plus 160. Green Bay plus 200 right behind them. The Bears, who are going to be probably, once again, the hot pick this season to win the NFC North, plus 340. And then the Vikings, all the way down at plus 600. They were plus 700 prior to signing Kyler Murray yesterday. But I think it was like the worst-kept secret that Kyler was going to Minnesota. I first off just want to say, I don't think Kyler Murray is an elite quarterback. I definitely don't think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's a debatable, like, top half quarterback in the league, which would be top 16, I guess. I think he's in that range. And we're going to discuss all the quarterbacks in the NFC North later on in the show to start the 10 o'clock hour because this division is strong with QBs. That's for sure. But it's an absolute upgrade over what the Vikings had going on last year. 2 seasons ago, when the Lions and Vikings were both awesome, Detroit won 15 games, Minnesota won 14 games. The Lions were able to overcome the Brian Flores defense, which, of course, is time and time again talked about as just stifling to play against. They blitz like no other. They bring a ton of pressure, and they really force the quarterback to make quick decisions and make the playmakers make plays. The Lions were able to overcome that because they had Ben Johnson. And, of course, they had an elite offensive line, which probably the O-line played a little bit more of a factor than Ben Johnson. Everyone knows that picture that I'm talking about in that final game of the season in Week 18 when they show Brian Flores and Ben Johnson. They both have the play sheet over their mouths. They're just staring at the field. Like, it's one of the coolest screenshots they ever showed on a broadcast in recent NFL history. And, like, I think about that game all the time. Ben Johnson beat Brian Flores both times in that season when both teams were really good. Last year, the Lions and Vikings won both games. Now, of course, the Lions' offensive line was worse, but the Vikings were worse too. They had a way worse quarterback. The first game, J.J. McCarthy had his first good game of his career, essentially, against Detroit. We went into that game, Lions-Vikings, at the midpoint of the season last year, and everyone was out on McCarthy. I mean, it was GG's for the kid. That was when the 9 stuff started happening after that game against Detroit, because that's when 9 comes out, and he has a big game, and I get feisty, and this and that, and then, of course, it was all downhill from there for J.J. McCarthy. And then the second time around, on Christmas, with the Lions facing elimination, Minnesota rolls out Max Brosmer as their quarterback and beats Detroit on Christmas, when the Lions still had something to play for, still had a chance to get into the playoffs, and were eliminated in that game by Max Brosmer. So once again, I'm not saying Kyler Murray is this great quarterback, but Minnesota goes 9-8 last year with those two guys playing QB. Disaster play. They clearly didn't trust J.J. McCarthy. They clearly don't anymore because they brought in Kyler Murray to be his replacement now, and yet they still beat Detroit both games last season. Brian Flores, of course, comes back to Minnesota after a good amount of speculation that he was going to leave Minnesota to go be a head coach. I know him and the Steelers were pretty connected throughout this offseason. Pittsburgh ends up going with Mike McCarthy. Flores returns to Minnesota on a really big contract for a defensive coordinator. And I believe that Minnesota has the best combination of play callers in the NFL, with Kevin O'Connell calling plays offensively, Brian Flores on defense. I don't think that's a hot take by any means. I mean, everyone fears Brian Flores. And what Kevin O'Connell has done since coming to Minnesota, at least with the quarterback play that he's had, Kyler Murray has a chance to be the best guy that's been there. I'm not saying he is, has a chance to be, because we have to remember what we thought about Sam Darnold going into that Minnesota season. I mean, they won 14 games with Darnold as their QB, and it's easy to look back and just say, well, yeah, Sam Darnold's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Of course they were really good. Like, he's gone back-to-back years of being awesome. But we have to remember where we were going into that season. Like, Sam Darnold got signed by Minnesota to be the vet dude with J.J. McCarthy when they drafted him. McCarthy gets injured. He's out for the year. Okay, we're rocking with Sam Darnold. And, of course, Sam Darnold's career just absolutely shoots up from there. And I don't want to sit here and act like it's not any credit to Kevin O'Connell. It absolutely has to be. And so going into this season, Kyler Murray is viewed much higher than Sam Darnold was, than, of course, J.J. McCarthy was last year, maybe in the tail end of Kirk Cousins' Minnesota career. Like, I think the grand scheme opinion on Kyler Murray has shifted a little bit too negatively. It seemed like towards the end of the year last year, and obviously he dealt with injury a ton for Arizona, but he gets memed a lot, right? Plays video games. He's the Call of Duty guy. You know, when the new Call of Duty comes out, Kyler Murray plays bad football. It's kind of a funny joke. He's my size, height-wise. That's not a good thing. I'm not very tall, ladies and gentlemen. So those are always the good jokes. And I'm already seeing people saying, like, oh, you have to be able to see over the offensive line to be good. Oh, good one. Classic joke, right? Kyler Murray's been a good quarterback in this league. Like, he absolutely has not been a disaster. He's fine. He's good enough for what Minnesota needs. And for me, that's good enough to be potentially the best team in this division. And at least for Detroit, like the teams that I fear the most to play against, I know the Lions swept Chicago last year. I think Chicago's due for a little bit of regression based off of all the weird games they won last year. They still have this Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell thing that I can still hold it over Ben Johnson's head. Hey, you haven't beaten the Lions and Dan Campbell yet. That's kind of fun to say. Green Bay, of course, swept Detroit last year. And, I mean, I'm always going to think that Green Bay is just good but not great. That's always how I'm going to view them. They'll probably be good next year. They'll probably go 10-7, maybe 11-6. They ended the year they basically crawled their way into the playoffs last year. And, of course, they did not end things well once they got into the playoffs. So I think Bears are due for regression. Packers, maybe that stuff leaks into 2026 a little bit from the way they ended the season last year. They'll still be fine. But Minnesota's ceiling with Kyler Murray, I think, is quite scary. With O'Connell, with Brian Flores, of course, they've lost a couple pieces defensively, so that totally is going to play into it. But they still just have such an elite coaching staff. And Murray, he's good enough, man. Think about how good he was with DeAndre Hopkins those first couple years once Hopkins got traded to Arizona. Like, that duo was really fun. And now him and Justin Jefferson, this scares me a little bit, John. I've been talking about this for a while. I've been waiting for this to go down because this has been a take of mine that I've had, and I know a lot of people don't agree with it because Kyler Murray's not viewed to be this elite quarterback, but I don't view him as an elite quarterback either. I just think Minnesota needed someone that's decent, and they haven't had that. At least last year they didn't, and they still went 9-8. I think with a decent quarterback, this team is so scary.
Yeah, it's a quarterback that has name value with a team that just owns the Lions. Like, you know, we have on the graphic, Vikings equal Lions' biggest threat. I don't even know if you're saying, okay, Vikings NFC North. It's just Vikings going 2-0 against Detroit.
Correct.
Like, and you know, in a perfect world, obviously the Lions go undefeated in division. 4-2 wouldn't be the worst thing either. 2 wins against Chicago, 2 against Green Bay. But the Vikings are a matchup problem. They have been, and now they have their most capable quarterback since probably Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, towards
a couple
the
of
end,
years ago,
like,
and not even Kirk Cousins towards the end. Better than that, you know, like mid whatever. How I guess
the year
Kirk
that
Cousins
they
was
won
there.
all those, the year they won all those close possession games,
Correct.
it was like Kirk. It was
like
this is probably
21,
like,
22.
Say it's probably like 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
ago now. At this point, that year probably Kirk Cousins was the best quarterback play they've had in a while.
So like, yeah, it's fair to feel that just because again, if I'm looking at the NFC North, I still don't fear the Vikings as division winners. I still think, and it just shows how tough this division is, Vikings can finish last, even with Kyler. Like,
yeah,
that's how I projected it. Like,
I think that's more so just about a grand talk of
Yes.
the division as a whole,
Yes.
though, right?
But-
Like I mean, last year every team went 9-8 or above. Nobody went under
Correct.
500. Like that's just shows how quality this division is.
correct. So, but the argument is, or the conversation piece is about the threat they pose to the Lions. Lions don't handle mobile quarterbacks well. Check. Lions just don't play well against Minnesota. Check. The coordinators seem to have their numbers at least over the
Yeah.
sample size that
Since
you gave.
Ben Johnson has left, absolutely.
Yeah, of last year. Check. Vikings still have Justin Jefferson, right? Check. Like, and that's a secondary matchup nightmare for the Lions, and it has been. Like, yeah, it's going to be concerning. I don't think, again, I would just pause to be like, okay, he's a difference maker in division. I can't say that I fear them like to a degree more. They're still feared. Like if you just inserted average veteran quarterback, like I think it's a level above that. But I don't think Kyler puts them over the top like, say, a Caleb Williams or a Jordan Love.
Sure, yeah.
Like that's we'll get to, and it's going to be fun because I think we're going to have 4 different rankings or a different order of the rankings of the NFC quarterbacks when we talk about it. But, yeah, like Kyler's in a capable system. He has been a capable guy. And he has the ceiling that's higher than a generic veteran quarterback who's been a backup for a couple years that could have been the replacement. Name your guy.
AKA Sam Darnold, right?
Correct.
That's the precisely guy you just described. Like I understand we can look back now and realize like, yes, Sam Darnold in the big day of 2026 is a better quarterback than Kyler Murray. I think we all have to agree with that, right? He just won the Super Bowl with Seattle. But when he was brought into Minnesota, Sam Darnold was a laughingstock. Like he had been a full year of a backup. He hadn't played since being in Carolina and was terrible, got laughed off the field. Like Kyler Murray's not at that level. Yes, he gets memed for the Call of Duty stuff and he's tiny and this and that and his contract is crazy. Minnesota's bringing him in on a minimum deal. Like they're going to have their QB on a tiny contract. Justin Jefferson now maybe has the best quarterback he's had since Kirk Cousins that we talked about like 5 or 6 years ago at the beginning of Justin Jefferson's career. Like, to me, this is an awesome move for Minnesota. And it also shows to me that they're not playing around anymore. They're not waiting this thing out with J.J. McCarthy. They don't want the Sam Darnold situation to scar them forever with the J.J. McCarthy stuff, which I respect. It's proving that you made the wrong decision. You're looking yourself in the mirror and saying, yeah, we messed up, but we're going to try and fix it now. And they're going to try to fix it with Kyler Murray.